Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Anderson Falls Heritage Society, welcome to the first presentation of our 2025 Summer Speakers Series. Our presenter tonight is Mr. Don Wickman. Don Wickman is a multicaster, historian, writer, researcher, educator, horticulturalist, public speaker, and photographer. Versatility is his byword. His 2011 book, A Very Fine Appearance, The Civil War Photographs of George Houghton, published by the Vermont Historical Society, earned an Award of Merit from the American Association of State and Local History. He is considered the authority on the American Revolution site Mount Independence in Orwell, Vermont, and the Vermont Civil War battle flags. Over the years, Don has published 5 books and over 300 articles on a wide range of historical topics for the local press in Vermont and New York, plus several magazines and professional journals. Most recently, the Diary of Thomas Allen in the 2025 Bulletin of the Fort Ticonderoga Museum. Don is also proud that 8 of his photographs have been selected as North Country Public Radio's Photo of the Day. He thoroughly enjoys learning and sharing history and conveying how important it is to remember the lessons learned from history. Please welcome Don Wickman.
What a great crowd. I hope you're here for the program and not just the air conditioning. But to echo what Allison said about the Community Art Festival, Saturday is delightful, and the fun part that we've had when we've gone there looking at all the plein air paintings is trying to figure out where they were standing for some of the images. And it's like, oh wow, that's Cassidy Road and Dugway Road on the Ausable. You know, you can start figuring out these. And so do make an effort, and I guess they're doing a little brunch on Saturday, and North Country Creamery's yogurt is right up there. So, but a little background on this program about looking at a virtual walking tour of Port Kent. Is actually, it's this fellow right over here, Garth Hood, that prompted my interest in Port Kent. We've only been up here officially since 2013, so I have a long way to go. But he did a program for the Heritage Society about Port Kent, and my wife and I were subbing at the district schools. Garth was the librarian, and I was like, wow, it's really interesting. And he shared some of his material, and I wrote a series of articles for the Lake Champlain Weekly. And that was back in 2018. And then Nancy Smith over here was bugging me about doing a tour last year, and I couldn't figure out the fact that either you have to go downhill and then walk back up to your car, or you start at the waterfront, walk all the way up, and walk back down. This is laziness here. You don't have to walk at all. So last September, Rich Frost, who's going to be here next month? Okay, and I've known him through Battle of Plattsburgh when I was at the Kent-Delord House, and also he wrote for the Lake Champlain Weekly. We walked Port Kent along basically the route that we're doing today, and I was taking pictures and then have integrated a number of archival photos so you have past and present, or in some cases what's gone from the present. So we'll just go off and running here, and you'll find out that this has really been a lot of fun, and we can handle some questions and comments at the end. So you want to get the other light?
Or you just leave it on in case somebody
Okay.
come up.
You can see this, right? Okay, so leaving no trace, Fort Kent settled in 1826, a virtual walking tour. Of course, your big year is next year, bicentennial for the hamlet. And a minuscule bit of history. A lot of Fort Kent history focuses around this fellow, Elkanah Watson. And they settled this area, and there's the very gridiron streets that are laid out at Fort Kent. And you might think, okay, it's Fort Kent, who's it named after? James Kent, the Chancellor of New York State. Now, this is the more interesting small world syndrome. He was also a one-time owner of the Kent-Delord House. Before Henry Delord purchased it, he bought it from James Kent. So there's that link, and I never heard that or understood that until Garth gave his presentation, and a big light bulb went over my head. So this is what we're focusing on. Okay, that's the bait for the time. But see, there's 3 time periods of Fort Kent history. Commercial, tourism, now residence. But we're going to focus on this time. We'll divert a little bit here and there with some of the houses that we'll see, but this is the focus when people came from everywhere and spent weeks and maybe the entire summer in Fort Kent. And you'll be like, look at some of these places. We are actually going to start up on the hill at what was known in 1915 as the Champlain Country Club, now it's Harmony. This was built by William Susdorf, who also built the Northern Pines Inn and owned 1,800 acres. At one time, it was 18 holes. Now it's only 14. The other 4 holes that are now no longer used or present are on the south side of 373. And I've heard that if they ever wanted to build those, there's a lot of dollars involved. But the original country club, this building is still there. Of course, it has been changed a little bit because that's the restaurant and the bar. And there you have the pro shop. It's hard to get a photo of the modern one because of where the pro shop is and where their gardens. But 1915, when they were golfing there. And you can see some of the scenes. This is very duplicated. If you're on the porch of Harmony, this is what you're seeing still. The final hole. Now, I'm going to ask here, and that'll be the last time. Anybody know what that circle is? It's not a crop circle.
Putting green.
No.
Missile silo.
Not big enough. We're close. That is clock golf. What they would do, you see this circle here, this is not here, they would put numbers around the edge. You putt from the middle and go for different holes along the way. And this is the still existing circle of the clock golf that's present. Very often I would see, also they do weddings right in the middle of it. So that's part of it. I know one thing, they had one at Bluff Point at one time also. So clock golf. And I was told a month ago, they still have the numbers there in storage. I was not aware of that. So we come out of, we come out of Harmony, we turn onto West Street, we walk by the cemetery and then take a left on Lumber. Okay, and you walk down there and you have the Watson family cemetery. And Elkanah Watson is a very important person, not only in this history, but Albany, American Revolution, you name it. But one of his biggest celebratory notes is creating the first agricultural fair in the United States in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And there's monuments honoring him on the green which still is in existence in Pittsfield. So he came up here, built his house, and died here, and the family is still using the cemetery. It's like walking through history. So we troop down Lumber and take a left onto 2nd Street, and right there's a house called Edge Hill. And this is what I've enjoyed about this entire experience. Okay.
You're the star.
Is finding the postcards, the buildings that are in postcards or other images, and then chasing down the present day one. This house is under renovation right now because it doesn't have most of the porch, but it's right there, which is really fun. And how you find some of these without walking? Use Google Street View and just go up and down the streets. It's a great thing to do in December. So we walk out 2nd Street to North Street, take a right, and on the left was the Pine Grove Hotel. Probably about the youngest one of all of them, built in the late 1920s. It was situated on a nice rise, great panorama of Lake Champlain, and one of its prime landmarks was these towering white pines that were in front of it. And it's great bargains if you want to go there. Double room with that, $4 a day. You know, wow, where can you go wrong? But one of the things that has occurred a lot in Port Kent over the years is fire. January 12, 2014, the Pine Grove burns down. And it's a shame because I think we drove by it like one time beforehand. I never had connected about the history of it. And it would have been nice to see a photo from 2013. And there's probably some out there. But it just devastated the entire thing. But some things are still remaining. For example, this is a footprint. And they've now taken down these 3 pines. I took these photos like in 2017. They're down, but you can still see where they were. Here was the tennis court. The tennis court is still there. And some vestiges of stone walls along North Street. So you can get an idea. And what's more is, here's the hotel. It was right up on this height of land. And this is the view that you would have had. Tennis court. Now, unfortunately, you can't see the lake, except during winter. But popular hotel, and it was sold in the late 40s with Tremolo Hall and the Northern Pines Inn, but that's another story. So we work our way down to Lake Street. This was a challenge, and without the help of Tom Prey, who's not here, I could not find the Champlain Lakeside Hotel. I Google Street Viewed up and down, trying to match, and he said, it's right opposite Tremolo. And I was like, I had photos of it, but they just changed the architecture, but then you can start seeing it. It was the private residence of Mr. Wells. And so it is still there. This was popular in the 19-teens. And some more modern views, and I'm just thrown off a little bit. What is this structure in the back? And it came up at one time, at least the Jesuits bought these 3 hotels to create sanctuaries for all the priests to come up and enjoy a month of rest and relaxation. They also made it a movie theater for them. And I've been told that they were showing movies at least in the 60s and 70s. Do you remember? Okay. I was able to peek inside. There's a big cooler in there. But one of the things I should mention is I asked permission to walk in there. So most of the views you're going to see are from the street. So to respect private property. If I got one off the street, I'd ask. But I was like, that's pretty interesting. Those Jesuits know how to party. Then we further go along. Tremolo Hall is such an interesting story. It was one that did not burn, but is no longer there. And it started off as the former house of William C. Watson, the son of Elkanah. And that's it right here. Now, a little bit of family genetics. William C. Watson was one of the first of a group to create the Essex County Agricultural Fair. So it ran in the blood. And gentlemen Farrell and Adgate bought this, started with this building, and then they added on to it from the northern end. And you can tell how they did it is that, look at the change of the porch width here. They added a little bit more of a veranda when they built the structure, when they added on. And also when Watson had it, they had a driveway right up to the gate, right up to the door. So you can see how close everything was together. And it was a wonderful place. They offered so much. This is one other structure that's still standing. I was told that this was called the grease house from cooking. But one of the nice things is when you walk through there, it's a grove of honey locusts. It is one of the most beautiful pieces of land. And you can see part of the cellar hole of Tremolo Hall still there. It was raised in 1975. Very hard to find that out, though. It didn't make much press. But you had a wonderful reception area. Their table was supposed to be superb for food. Had a great view of the lake and Tremolo Mountain. And look at all the stuff that they did. 60 feet above the level, broad piazza, and new addition, remodeled throughout. Now, across the street, though, was their party central. It was called the casino, and they weren't throwing dice and doing roulette or blackjack. This was just for parties and gatherings. And in front of it, they actually had a tennis court. And after you do a book on a photographer, you learn to look at different images. These were taken the same day. The girls are the same. The four players are the same. So same day, they just took it from a different view. But you can see the open nature of it. Nice fireplace. And all of these hotels were open only June, July, August, and part of September. So they weren't insulated. But it's interesting because the casino has changed. It's gotten bigger. This is the original part right here. The tower was added by the Jesuits. They said that they made this partly a chapel. And you can tell that it was added to because if you look really closely, this is fieldstone, and then it goes to cinder block. For there is the foundation. You cannot see that from the front, only from the back. But you can see that this is a smokehouse, and you can see how they were linked with the hotel, this place. Because here's the walkway coming out of the casino, crosses the road, And you look this way, it heads right to the site of Kent-Delord Hall. And they had a couple of cottages. A little bit of bird talk here. Whippoorwill, which hasn't changed that much. And Finch Cottage, which has undergone a great bit more of renovation with a second floor addition here. And a little less landscaping. So you do have, and that's what they were achieving here with these hotels. You also had cottages that you could rent for a long time, then go over and have your meals at the restaurant. So everything was right there. And plus, they also had one other thing. They had waterfront property. A beach right below there was some sand, a lot of gravel, and to give you a perspective, this is the Kent-Delord Hall site right up here. And how you would get down there is walk down this path, carefully cross the Delaware and Hudson tracks and hopefully not get hit by a train. And then you'd walk along here where they had a dock, a changing house, which you see here, and all lounge chairs, boats, etc. So you were ready to go and enjoy the lake. It has drastically changed. This is what it looked like in 2017. It was barely standing, and sadly to say now, the present owner, who I don't know who it is, took it all down. So it's gone. I only have my photos here to prove that it was there. But you have the stone wall, here's the deteriorating concrete dock. Right, that is still there. And then this is the road that still goes up to the railroad tracks. And when I took this from the very shore, I didn't know it had been posted, but it is posted now more on the trees. Now we're going to play detective a little bit here. It's like, what's in the background? Here's the picture that we saw before, the bathing beach. There's something in the background here. There's more people. This was the site of the beach for the Northern Pines Inn. I don't know exactly how they reached it, but you can still see the concrete slabs that are present there. And this is the best I could do from a blurry aerial. You could see how they had their dock down there on the water. So they were offering a lot of water activities, which is a perfect lead-in for the Northern Pines. Started off rather small by Susdorf, and then he added more structure. And offering, look at this, 18-hole golf course, tennis courts, water sports, saddle horses. Well, when you have 1,800 acres, you can wing it. And this gives you an idea of the footprint and how extensive it was. There's the main hotel. Look, there's the golf course. You can get a nice view of that if you cross-country ski along the shore. 2 cottages that we'll discuss, and this is what it looked like in about 2017. Needed a little love, but pretty extensive. And Susdorf actually built an access road almost from the Wickman Marsh access on 373 all the way into his hotel. You didn't have to take 373 and then go off. So a lot of surplus money available. But unfortunately, October 20th, 2022, it burns. It still stands. These are from last year. So the shell is there. I've heard various rumors that something might happen, nothing concrete. It's barely holding on, that's why. And one of the reasons these go up so fast is because it was balloon frame construction Probably very little insulation, and it just shoots right up. And he had two cottages, the White House, a little smaller than the one in DC, and Pinecroft, which has undergone a few changes also. But the White House looks a little more unchanged. But what I like about this, and this is the time period that we're looking at, the 30s and the 40s, this fellow's on vacation. Doesn't he look great in his tie and jacket? And somebody might salivate over that car in the background, too. So we're going to turn around here, now head south on Lake Street, go past the site of the Pine Grove, and we come up to a present day, it's a brown cake cot. It's after North Street. The original name of it was Rose Cottage. This was about the 1890s. And it was right on Lake Street and had an ownership change and a name change. Stable Inn. And it's still there. It's the only standing, I'm going to say, large hotel in Port Kent that's still standing. It's gotten a little smaller because this large L is now only half the size. They put a swimming pool for the other half. But there's images of people playing croquet on the lawn, and that also apparently had lake access. It's a little hard to figure out how they got down the slope. Looks pretty comfortable up there, doesn't it? And this is what it is today. So you can see the former L, or the much smaller L, and you can just imagine people just being there. And this is the view of it from the lake shore. So it had a nice panorama also. Now we're going to digress a little bit from hotels for a moment, because this might spark some memories. I know Garth has mentioned it to me. Oh, sorry. High prices here. The good one here. Broiled live lobster in lemon butter for $2.75. Okay, let's go for it. The most expensive item is the filet mignon for $4.50. Can't do that now, for sure. But such a range of food. And also there's their dining room. Okay, we're continuing down. Rennell's store. Garth shared with me his experience as a kid of buying bubble gum there. So it was still in existence in the 90s. There's an article, I think, in one of these notebooks about the Rennells. And it has turned into a private residence. It's fun walking along there and saying, wow, there it is, and then being able to match the view. So that's still standing. There's also a church on the opposite side, Sacred Heart Chapel. It's no longer there because it burned in 2004. It had actually been closed by the diocese and turned into apartments. I'd like to know how they put these two windows in up here. There could have been a challenge, but someone told me that this window is still on display somewhere, and I can't remember where.
That's Adam's glass.
Thank you, Adam's glass. Right, but beautiful pieces of work. And of course, the other church up on the hill, the Union Church, that burned also. Then we go along one building down to Cliff Cottage. One time it was owned by another Rennell, Charles. And you could see how it has changed in views along the way. This is today's view. This is from down at the tracks. This is from Lake Street. This is a blow up from another postcard. And I read somewhere that Charles Grinnell, he would be living in this most of the time, except that if he had somebody that wanted to rent it out for a month, he moved over to the hotel across the street. And where did he move to? The Berlin House, which actually was first called the Valcourt House. It's a little hard to interpret all that, and it's hard to read on this map from 1856, but you could just barely make out Valcourt House. So he ran that, and it was popular. Look at this. No live concerts. But in 1947, a story broke that he was going to dismantle it, raise the structure. And this was a headline in the paper. And he built 2 cottages that are still there on the grounds. Peter Comstock. Okay, Mr. Port Kent. And of course, this wasn't a place of lodging, this was a home. And it's gone through several renovations, and a delightful young family has been doing a great deal of work of bringing it back to its beauty. And just in June, through the Pomeroy Foundation, this plaque was put up, this historic marker was put up directly in front of the house, talking about the accomplishments of Peter Comstock. Couldn't get that up there any faster, could I? But he deserves to be spoken of. Okay, not for me, it's okay. Well, that's great preview music for my next slide, which is why it's fun to be a detective. It's a house called Sunnybank, which is right opposite the road from the Kellogg or Comstock house. This was a challenge. I looked at this, I was like, okay, it's on one of the streets that ran east to west. Let's figure it out. And then it was like, it has undergone extreme renovation, but the footprint is still there. So it shows that people enjoyed some of the old houses, they just renovated them accordingly. Great view, I'll say that. And I was able to match it because of the topography a little bit. Okay. Can't have another mention of Port Kent without Elkanah Watson and his fantastic home from 1827. It just stands out so much, and if you drive along Lake Street, you're going to be riveted to that. Then one of the smaller ones was the Bayview Cottage. It's right on the corner of Lake and 373. And it primarily was there during the 30s and 40s. And they offered a whole batch of activities: boating, bathing, fishing, and other sports. I like this: electric light and hot and cold running water in all the rooms. Cool. And more, is you could play a game of tennis. And there's the house today. We would probably like this view right about now when we walked outside. So now we are going to take a left onto 373 and just give you some comparable views here. Looking toward the lake, the view is still there. Or looking west up 373, the Harv's Trough is gone. And we're not going to walk all the way up there, but right where 2nd Avenue in that area comes into 373, on the opposite side of the road where the campground is now, stood the Mountain View House. And it started off as one structure, then two, and then they opened up a dance hall. I was told by somebody on Sunday his father used to play the saxophone in one of the bands that would be here. They bring in big bands to draw people. And you get an idea of what the dining room and the lobby look like. And what's interesting, if you look at the photos from Trempealeau Hall, Ostable Inn, you'll see another one at the Lakeside, Mountain View House. The dining rooms look relatively the same. And we can't mention Port Kent without mentioning the railroad. Okay, 1875, they open up and connect from Whitehall to Plattsburgh. This is the original station. It was several sidings. It underwent some paint job and a lot of decline. And it was taken down, I don't have the exact year for it, but probably by the 80s. It had a telegraph office, a fantastic view. This is a great picture showing also the dock. And in 1995, they built the present structure. Unfortunately, Port Kent is no longer a stop on Amtrak. It's a fly-through. And then if Jim Jones was here, he would jump right in on his Keysville, Ostable Chasm, and Lake Champlain Railroad. Was one of the original dreams of Port Kent was they already had a ferry running from Burlington to Port Kent. They wanted to create a railroad that went through the Adirondacks and into St. Lawrence County. They thought Keysville wasn't going to be the end of it. We were going to keep on going. It didn't achieve that, but they did create a siding. You can see it right up here. If you're looking north on the main line of the D&H, here's the Peanut Railroad, as they called it, going off. See, here's present day 373. No, not really. But old 373, and there's the main line, and here's the Keysville, Ostable Chasm, and Lake Champlain. And you can still see remnants of it. Not only along 373, but it actually crossed Lake Street. Here it's coming up the road, right? There's the Ostable Inn. You can see the tracks in the Ostable Inn. If you look on Lake Street, here it is coming up from the station. There's the main line, there's the railroad, the Peanut, here's Lake Street. And what's more is, here's the view here. This is Grinnell's store right here, Ostable Inn. There's the grade, here's the grade going down. So it's still easy to spot where the railroad was. Great little bit of history. And Amtrak still runs through. When they started up the Adirondack service again several years ago, I went and took pictures of it coming northbound and the following day when it came southbound, because they used the nice new 50th anniversary of Amtrak Railroad locomotive. And freight is still used. This is a Norfolk Southern locomotive. Usually it's Canadian Pacific. Now we're down at the waterfront. Grandview Inn. Burned, unfortunately. Here goes another one, 1940. But it not only had the inn right on the beach, but a whole batch of little cottages. And they were advertising it and all of it, great sandy beach, as most of us know. You get an idea, there's Cliff Cottage up there. That's where I took that other photo from, or that other crop photo from. The cottages, when it burned, the the daughters of the owner kept on running the cottages for a number of years. The owner of the inn actually was killed by a D&H train at 373. Garth can give you all the details. And you can just imagine the cottages lined up right along here on the beach. Well, if you wanted a place that had a long history, this was the oldest established inn hotel in Port Kent. Don't have an exact start for it, but you just see the buildings keep on increasing. This is the original lakeside. Then they added this section. Then they added this section. More and more and more. And it drew many people because look how accessible. You got off the train, somebody probably picked you up. You arrived by steamboat, you walked over to the inn. It was so accessible at that time. And something that you can't see now is how clear it is. Always in the background. There's only one thing left of the lakeside. It's this wall right here. But I like this. When I stumbled on this one, did you know this, folks from Port Kent? The Naples of the Adirondacks? It's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And you could see their dining room, loads of cars doing business there. So it was extremely popular until it burned in 1934. And this was owned by Martin Rennell. Now also Martin Rennell, after he sold, at one time, I'll cover it, follow me on this. He opened up the next facility that I'm going to talk about. But then he also owned at one time Tremolo Hall and Northern Pine. He sold those to the Jesuits and immediately afterward bought Greystone, which is the Elkanah Watson House. But when I mention this next place to people who have lived here for a long while, their eyes sort of get misty-eyed. Because they're like, that place was so great. Oh, okay, one thing. There's the Burns, 1934, the wall, the only thing you can see. And Rennell built the Kanata Lodge. Okay. And I've just heard so many people talk fondly about this, and all the comments that I have here, as I know, Matt, there's two people that run the Greater Adirondack Ghost Tour Company, and they'll post postcards. And there's comments that come from those. And twice they posted photos of Kanata Lodge, and I went through and took out some of the comments because they were so fun to read. And it had a great, so it was an eatery tavern. And it had a very warm environment. You could see with the fireplace. And again, the site of it was, there's the wall from Lakeside, and it was right in this location. And these are some of the comments. It was a great place, so fun, sad it's gone. In the early 70s, that was the great the place. The others are, look at this. I like some of mine. Fuzzy memories. Spent many a dollar there. I left too many brain cells there. Love going there. Great place to predate. This is the one did not come from the Facebook page, but was told to me. I remember riding home atop a station wagon holding onto the luggage rack. And this is interesting is that the ferry, which we'll mention, ran on a more regular schedule than it did in the 2000s. It ran at night also, and this is very true. I was told by this number of people is drinking age in Vermont was higher, 21 than New York, and people would come over from Burlington, drink a lot, and then take the ferry back home.
Or the boat.
Pardon?
Or their toes.
Right. But it was so much fun finding all these comments, and there were like almost 100 on that Facebook page. But one thing that it has evolved in Port Kent, which is really important, is changes in transportation. The first people that were showing up in Port Kent were primarily doing the steamboats. The lakeside was opened by then. When the railroad opened in 1875, that showed a change in technology, but they were still doing the steamboats. The last one that popped in was the highway, the cars. So now people were driving up here. And one thing that I put together for about the demise in Port Kent, besides everything started burning, was I saw, when I was doing my article for the Lake Champlain Weekly, a little article saying that they had concreted the Route 9. All of a sudden, people didn't take a side loop into Port Kent. They went right to Plattsburgh. And what happens in the 40s and 50s? All the hotels built along Route 9. And some of those, we still have them in the form of the Villa, the Grand Prix, the Shamrock. There was one at Sable Chasm. So that's what happened, is that it evolved from Port Kent lodging, and now people were taking shorter vacations and they were doing motels. So, but the ferry would run an hour trip, very classic, wonderful to take. But I'm not sure if it was COVID that might have caused it, prompted its closure, or it was just the demise in number of passengers and cars. But a lot of Port Kent history disappeared in 2020. Somebody told me that they should have a whole batch of money and make this a seasonal restaurant down there. Call it the Canada 2. So as I close here, there's a lot of people that I want to thank for this, because I used Jim Jones' book, Steve Polo's, Garth Hood, Tom Gray, special collections everywhere else. There's loads of images out there. There's hundreds of various postcards, and you're just like, how do you pick and choose? But that's my closing, a sunrise over Port Kent. And it's like, you got a great little hamlet down there with a lot of walking history to do. So, I hope you built up a good sweat tonight. Remember, did you hydrate? Okay. But thank you for your attention tonight. Thank you. I will say, I am not the expert. I know there's probably Port Kent residents here that can share so many different stories or say, you got that one wrong, but maybe not. But thank you, it's fun. So, any questions? Or if I just, your brains are just absorbed, overflowing.
Well done.
Very interesting.
Thank you. And sometime the Adirondack Historic Architecture might consider this as a tour for next year for the bicentennial. We have to work out some logistics. The biggest one is, where is a bathroom? There's only one, and that's Harmony, when you start. But I would start there and work my way down.
Where you just put up that historical monument.
Oh. If you copy of this book, you'll have to buy it. There are copies for sale over there. And I just want to briefly mention our next program. Our next program will be a presentation on the Estes family and business through centuries and generations. That presentation will also have a Port Kent tie-in, because The Estes Company had its origins in Port Kent in 1847 and is still in business today. And we'll be having a descendant from that family who is now the person who is currently running that company. He'll be here to make that presentation. And that will be here on Wednesday, August 20th at 7 o'clock. So we hope to see you all then. Thank you. Thank you again for coming.